My mother told me they wanted to opt out of Christmas. I said, okay, until I spotted photos of their place crammed with guests, even my sister's partner's so-called daughters. I sent my dad a video showing the $26,700 truck I'd bought. Only 73 minutes later, my dad was knocking at my. Hey everyone. You ever have your entire world shatter, not with a bang, but with a single social media post? 1 minute, I thought my family wanted a quiet Christmas. The next, I saw photos of a massive celebration, a party I was deliberately cut out of, and it all came down to a shocking betrayal involving a $26,700 truck. What would you do when your own flesh and blood lies straight to your face, then celebrates without you? I'm Stuart, I'm 34, and last Christmas wasn't just a holiday. It was a gut punch. A brutal lesson in family betrayal. For years, I'd built this life as an automotive engineer here in Detroit, miles away from my controlling mother and all the drama back in Boston. So, when my mom called me 3 weeks before Christmas to say they wanted to skip the big celebration this year, I actually understood. I thought, okay, maybe they just need a break. Boy, was I wrong. Those social media photos? They weren't just a house full of celebration. They were a house full of secrets. And I was the one deliberately excluded. Let me tell you how this Christmas disaster unfolded, and how that one truck, the one I'd saved so hard for, changed everything. Growing up in our middle-class suburb outside Boston, everything looked normal on the surface. Cookie-cutter houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, families that seemed happy. But inside our home, things were complicated. My mother, Linda, had this way of controlling everything, everyone. A micromanaging grip disguised as motherly concern. And from an early age, I noticed how different she was with me compared to my younger sister, Melissa. Melissa was born when I was 7, and from that moment, she became the golden child. She gets showered with praise for average grades. Me? I had to achieve perfection just to get a nod. Stuart, Melissa is more sensitive than you. She needs more encouragement, my mother would always say whenever I dared to point out the unfairness. For the longest time, I believed it. I truly thought I was just stronger. That I needed less attention, less approval. My father, Robert, he was different. A quiet man, a mechanic at a local garage. He wasn't one for many words, but he showed his love in other ways. He'd invite me to the garage on weekends, teaching me everything about engines, about cars. Those Saturday mornings, surrounded by the smell of oil and gasoline, became my sanctuary. Away from my mother's critical eyes. Away from the constant comparisons. You have a natural talent for this, Stuart, Dad would say, his face lighting up when I'd figure out a tricky problem. Those rare compliments? They meant everything to me. My passion for automotive engineering was born right there. In that garage. While other kids dreamed of astronauts, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted to design engines, to understand every single component. My father nurtured that interest, bringing home mechanical magazines and old repair manuals for me to devour. High school was tough. My mother had a plan for my life: stay in Boston, go to a local college, take over my uncle's insurance business. But I had my own dreams. I applied to engineering programs across the country, secretly, with my father's help. When the acceptance letter from Michigan Tech came with a partial scholarship, I was ecstatic. My father was so proud, but he tried to hide it from my mother. Linda was livid. So, you think you're too good for us now? Going all the way to Michigan to play with cars? Her voice dripped with disdain. Melissa, 14 at the time, watched the argument from the stairs, her eyes wide. We'd never been close, but in that moment, I swear I saw something like admiration in her gaze, maybe even a hint of envy for my courage to defy our mother. College was freedom. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of her expectations. I excelled. Made friends who shared my passion. Even had relationships without my mother's inevitable disapproval. After graduation, I landed a job with one of the major automotive companies right here in Detroit. The distance between Michigan and Massachusetts became more than just geographical. With every promotion, every achievement, I felt less inclined to share my success with my family, knowing my mother would somehow diminish it or make it about Melissa. Years passed. My visits home became less frequent. Christmas was usually the one time I made the effort, but even those holidays were strained. My mother would make passive-aggressive comments about my absence. My father would try to smooth things over. And Melissa? She'd oscillate between siding with Mom and trying to connect with me. 5 years ago, when I was 29, I got a significant promotion. I was leading a team designing more fuel-efficient engines. I called home so excited to share the news. "That's nice, Stuart," my mother had said, completely disinterested. "Did you hear Melissa got engaged? Her boyfriend Jordan proposed last weekend. We're planning a summer wedding. You'll need to request time off work, of course." The engagement fell apart 3 months later when Jordan cheated on Melissa with her best friend. I flew home to support my sister, despite our strained relationship. For a brief period, we connected. She opened up about the pressure she felt under our mother's constant attention. "You got out, Stuart," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her face. I sometimes wish I had been brave enough to leave, too. But that moment of connection was short-lived. After the breakup drama faded, Melissa fell back into her role as Mom's perfect daughter, and the distance between us grew again. 2 years ago, Melissa started dating Derek. From the start, something about him felt off to me. Too polished. Too quick with the perfect response. During one of my rare visits home, I caught him in several small lies about his background and career. When I tried to voice my concerns, my mother dismissed them outright. "Just because you're jealous that your sister has found someone doesn't mean you have to try to ruin it for her," she'd snapped during a tense dinner. My father gave me a look across the table, a look that said he shared my concerns, but he stayed silent, as he always did when it came to confronting my mother. Last year, Derek moved in with Melissa, and suddenly, there were photos on social media of him with 2 young girls he introduced as his daughters from a previous relationship. This struck me as very odd because he'd explicitly told everyone he'd never been married or had children. When I mentioned this discrepancy to Melissa, she quickly changed the subject. Despite the growing distance, I still tried to maintain a connection, especially with my father. I called regularly, sent gifts, made an effort to visit at least once a year. But each visit left me drained, diminished, like I was reverting to the role of the disappointing son, regardless of my accomplishments. As this past December approached, I found myself dreading the usual Christmas visit. The previous year had been particularly difficult, with my mother spending the entire time comparing my life unfavorably to Melissa and Derek's. So, when my mother called 3 weeks before Christmas with her surprising suggestion, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Emotions that I couldn't have known would lead to the most significant confrontation of our family's history. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening. I was just getting home, juggling my laptop bag, takeout, and keys when my phone rang. Seeing Mom on the screen, I took a deep breath. Our conversations usually left me feeling worse. But I still answered, every time, clinging to some stupid hope that things might eventually improve. "Stuart, your father and I have been thinking," she began, skipping any greeting. "We want to take a break from all the Christmas stress this year." I balanced the phone against my ear as I set my things down. "What do you mean, Mom?" "Well, you know how hectic the holidays get. The decorating, the cooking, the gifts. We're not getting any younger, and we thought it might be nice to have a quiet Christmas this year. Just low-key. No fuss." This was unexpected. My mother loved Christmas. Or rather, she loved orchestrating the perfect Christmas and being praised for it. She'd typically start planning months in advance. "So, no family gathering this year?" I asked, trying to understand. We thought we'd just have a simple dinner, maybe watch some movies. Nothing elaborate. No need for you to fly all the way here. I know how busy you are. Something in her tone made me suspicious, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe my parents really were tired. My father was 62, and his mechanic job was taking its toll. What about Melissa and Derek? Are they skipping Christmas, too? Oh, they might drop by briefly since they live so close, but they have their hands full with his girls visiting for the holidays. It'll all be very casual. I thought about my packed work schedule. My team was finalizing a new hybrid engine design, and the deadline was tight. Staying in Detroit would let me get ahead. If you're sure, Mom, I can stay here this year if that makes things easier for you and Dad. That would be for the best, Stuart. We'll call you on Christmas Day, of course. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Part of me was glad to avoid the usual holiday tension, but another part felt a sharp pang of sadness. Despite everything, Christmas was the one time I reliably saw my father in person. I called him the next day. Dad, Mom told me about the low-key Christmas plan. Are you really okay with that? There was a slight pause. Your mother thinks it's best this year. His voice sounded resigned. I could almost picture him shrugging. But what do you think, Dad? We could still get together, just you and me. I could come up for a couple of days, stay at a hotel. No, son. Don't worry about it. Focus on your work. We'll talk on Christmas. Tell me more about this engine design you're working on. Just like that, the subject changed. My father had never been one to challenge my mother's decisions, and this was no exception. Over the next couple of weeks, I threw myself into work. The office gradually emptied as people took time off, but I welcomed the quiet. I arrived early, stayed late, making significant progress. My colleague James noticed my extended hours. Working through the holidays, Stuart? No plans? I explained the situation, trying to sound casual. James frowned. Well, you can't spend Christmas alone. Come to my place. My wife always cooks enough to feed an army. Several other coworkers made similar offers. Marcus invited me to his annual Christmas Eve party. Diana insisted I join her family's dinner. Even my boss, Alan, suggested his cabin. I thanked them all, but declined. The truth was, I had something important to work on besides the engine project. For the past 6 months, I had been saving for a special gift for my father. He'd always talked about owning a Ford F-150 truck, specifically the King Ranch Edition with its distinctive saddle brown leather interior. It was his dream vehicle, but one he'd always set aside, prioritizing family expenses. 3 weeks earlier, I'd finally found the perfect one. A slightly used 2024 model with low mileage in his favorite color, a deep blue. The price tag was steep, $26,700. But I'd been saving diligently. I'd arranged to pick it up on December 23rd, planning to surprise him on Christmas Day. Now, with the change of plans, I was unsure what to do. Part of me considered driving it all the way to Boston, but my mother's insistence on a quiet Christmas made me hesitate. I decided to wait. Maybe give it to him for his birthday in February instead. As Christmas Eve approached, a nagging feeling of unease grew stronger. Something about my mother's sudden desire to skip traditions just didn't sit right. I called my sister, hoping for a clearer picture. Melissa, is everything okay with Mom and Dad? This whole skipping Christmas thing seems weird. Everything is fine, Stuart, she replied, sounding irritated. Not everything is a big conspiracy. They're just tired and want a break. Not everyone is a workaholic like you who never makes time for family except when it's convenient. Her words stung, especially because they echoed my mother's frequent criticism. I decided not to push further. Okay, just checking. Tell them I said hi. Sure. Gotta go. Derek and I are taking the girls to see Santa at the mall. She hung up before I could even say goodbye. On December 23rd, I picked up the truck as planned. Sitting in the driver's seat, inhaling the scent of new leather, I couldn't help but imagine my father's face when he would eventually see it. I took it for a drive, getting a feel for it before parking it in my apartment building's garage next to my everyday sedan. Christmas Eve was quiet. I ordered Chinese food, watched a couple of classic movies, video called a few friends who were similarly alone. Around 10 p.m., I decided to check social media before turning in. And that's when my world turned upside down. I wasn't particularly active on social media. I had accounts, sure, but I rarely posted. I mostly used them to keep up with college friends and colleagues. That Christmas Eve, I was mindlessly scrolling, seeing the usual parade of holiday photos. Decorated trees, smiling families, elaborate meals, wrapped presents. Then a photo stopped me cold. It was posted by my cousin Brian, who I hadn't seen in years. The caption read, "Annual Walsh Family Christmas Eve Bash. Wouldn't miss it for the world." The photo showed a large group of people in what was unmistakably my parents' living room. There was a massive Christmas tree in the corner, decorated with the antique ornaments my mother prized. Garlands hung along the fireplace mantel, and a table in the background was laden with what appeared to be an elaborate holiday feast. My heart began to race. I zoomed in. There was my mother, wearing a festive red sweater, smiling broadly with a wineglass in hand. Next to her, my father, looking uncomfortable, but present nonetheless. And there was Melissa with her arm around Derek, both dressed up and clearly enjoying themselves. I clicked through to Brian's profile and found more photos. Another showed my aunts, uncles, several cousins I hadn't seen in years. In one, my mother was presenting what looked like her famous Christmas ham, the one she made every year using my grandmother's secret recipe. The tradition she apparently hadn't been too tired to continue this year. My hands were shaking now. This was not a break from Christmas stress. This was not a simple dinner or watching movies. This was a full-blown Christmas celebration, possibly even larger than usual. And I had been deliberately excluded. I navigated to Melissa's profile next. She hadn't posted any photos from the event, which now seemed suspicious, but she was tagged in several, including one that made my stomach drop. Derek, with his arm around her, and standing in front of them were two young girls in matching Christmas dresses. The caption, posted by someone named Amber, who I didn't know, read, "Derek and Melissa with his adorable daughters. Such a beautiful family. Those girls. The daughters that had mysteriously appeared in Derek's life after he started dating my sister. The ones who, according to my own previous research when my suspicions were first raised, didn't seem to exist in any public record I could find. I clicked on Amber's profile. She was apparently a friend of Derek's, and her profile contained several photos of him with the girls at various events over the past year. In one from the summer, she had tagged another woman named Jennifer, referring to her as the girl's mother. Out of curiosity, I checked Jennifer's profile. It was mostly private, but her public photos showed no sign of the girls Derek claimed were his daughters. Instead, she appeared to be a single woman living in Chicago with no apparent connection to children at all. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Derek had been lying about having daughters. But why? What could he possibly gain? As I continued scrolling through the Christmas Eve photos, more details emerged. A shot of the dining room table showed place cards for each guest. I zoomed in, trying to read the names. There was one for my mother, my father, Melissa, Derek, his supposed daughters Emma and Lily, all my extended family members, even neighbors and family friends. But no place card for me. No empty seat waiting just in case I showed up. I had been completely erased from the family gathering. In another photo, I spotted gifts piled high under the tree. Many were beautifully wrapped in my mother's signature gold paper with elaborate bows. The tradition she apparently hadn't been too tired to continue this year. By now, my initial shock had given way to a burning anger. I had been lied to. Deliberately excluded from my own family's celebration. And for what? Because I moved away? Because I pursued my dreams instead of living the life my mother had planned for me? I tried calling my father. Straight to voicemail. Same with my mother and Melissa. It was late, so I suppose they might have gone to bed. Or perhaps they were still celebrating with everyone except me. I sent a text to my father, saw the photos from the Christmas party. Why did you lie to me? The message showed as delivered, then read, but no response came. I tried Melissa next, nice Christmas Eve party. Guess my invitation got lost in the mail. Again, read. No response. The silence was deafening. And damning. They had no explanation, or at least none they were willing to give at that moment. Sleep was impossible. I paced my apartment, alternating between hurt, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. Memories flooded back of other times I'd been made to feel less important, less loved. The time my high school graduation celebration was cut short because Melissa had a dance recital. The time my mother forgot my birthday entirely, but threw an elaborate surprise party for my sister 2 months later. The countless times my accomplishments were downplayed while Melissa's were celebrated extravagantly. Around 3 a.m., I found myself in the building's garage, sitting in the truck I'd bought for my father. The truck he would probably never see now. I ran my hands over the steering wheel, thinking about all the times he'd talked about owning a vehicle like this. How his eyes would light up whenever one drove past. My father wasn't a materialistic man. He had worked hard his entire life, providing for his family without complaint. This truck represented the one indulgence he had ever expressed wanting for himself. And I had been so excited to give it to him. To see the look on his face. Now that vision seemed like a foolish fantasy. The man who had stood by and allowed me to be excluded would never see this gift. Or so I thought in that moment of hurt and anger. As dawn broke on Christmas morning, I was still awake, having moved from the garage back to my apartment. My emotions had cycled through shock, anger, and hurt so many times that I felt numb. But somewhere in those dark hours, a new feeling had emerged. Resolve. I had done nothing wrong. I had built a successful life, tried to maintain family connections despite the difficulties, and even planned an incredibly generous gift. I had nothing to be ashamed of or apologize for. It was time my family understood exactly what they had thrown away with their deception. Christmas morning dawned cold and gray in Detroit. I hadn't slept more than an hour or two, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and exclusion. Outside my apartment window, snow was falling gently, coating the city in a layer of white that would normally seem festive and peaceful. Today, it just felt isolating. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through more photos from the family gathering I'd been deliberately excluded from. Each new image was another twist of the knife. There was my Aunt Martha, who always told me how much she missed seeing me. Uncle Dave, who claimed to be too busy when I was in town for work last summer. Cousins I'd grown up with. Neighbors who had known me since childhood. All gathered together in my parents' home, celebrating without me. I tried calling my father again. Straight to voicemail. My mother, the same. My sister, no answer. The silence was perhaps the most painful part. No explanations, no apologies, not even an attempt to justify what they'd done. Just silence, as if I weren't worth even the effort of a lie. I opened a bottle of bourbon, not caring that it was barely 8 a.m. I poured a generous glass and took a long sip, welcoming the burn in my throat. It matched the burning in my chest. The pain of knowing my own family had conspired to exclude me. My phone pinged with a text message. For a brief moment, hope flared that it might be one of them finally responding. But it was just James, my coworker, wishing me Merry Christmas and reiterating his invitation. I didn't respond. I couldn't bear the thought of putting on a brave face and pretending everything was fine among strangers, no matter how well-intentioned. As the hours passed, I found myself dwelling on memories, reassessing my entire childhood and family relationships through this new lens of deliberate exclusion. Had I always been the outsider? Was there something fundamentally wrong with me that made my own mother decide I wasn't worth including? I thought about my father. The man who had taught me everything I knew about cars. Who had quietly supported my dreams, even when he wouldn't stand up to my mother openly. How could he have gone along with this? How could he sit there in those photos celebrating, knowing his son was alone because of a lie he had participated in? Around noon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, with a Boston area code. I almost didn't answer, but some small spark of hope made me pick up. "Hello, Stuart? It's Janet, your parents' neighbor." Her voice was hesitant, almost whispering. Janet had lived next door for as long as I could remember, a kind woman in her 70s who always had cookies for the neighborhood kids. "Janet, why are you calling me?" I asked. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I was at your parents' house last night and I overheard your mother telling someone you chose not to come home for Christmas because you were too busy with work. But that didn't sound like you, so I just wanted to check." Her concern was touching, but it also made the betrayal even more real. So, my mother was actively spreading lies about me choosing not to come home. "They told me they wanted a quiet Christmas this year, Janet. No celebration, no gifts, just rest. I just found out about the party from photos online." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Oh, Stuart, I'm so sorry. That is not right. Thank you for calling, Janet. It means a lot." After we hung up, I felt a strange sense of validation. At least someone had noticed my absence and cared enough to reach out. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. I returned to the garage and sat in the truck again. Running my hand over the dashboard, I thought about all the times my father had compromised to keep peace in the family, always at his own expense. How he had dreams, desires, and wishes that were constantly set aside. And suddenly, I knew what I needed to do. I started the truck, feeling the powerful engine rumble to life. I pulled out my phone and began recording a video. "Hey, Dad. Merry Christmas. So, I know Mom told me you guys wanted a quiet holiday this year. No gifts, no celebrations. But then I saw the photos of the big family party I wasn't invited to. Everyone was there except me." I panned the camera around the interior of the truck. "I had been saving for months to get you this. It's the Ford F-150 King Ranch you've always wanted. 2024 model, only 8,000 miles on it. Cost me $26,700. I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion I felt. "I was going to drive it up to surprise you, but I guess that would have been awkward with all the guests you didn't tell me about. So now I'm not sure what to do with it. Maybe I'll keep it. As a reminder that no matter how hard I try, I'll never be good enough to be included in this family." I ended the recording and sat there for a long moment, debating whether to send it at all. Part of me wanted to just drive away, change my phone number, and never look back. Cut all ties with the family that had so easily cut me out. But another part, perhaps the part that still remembered the good times with my father in that garage so many years ago, wanted him to know what he had lost. Wanted him to understand the depth of the hurt. I sent the video. Then I went back to my apartment, poured another drink, and tried to figure out what to do with the rest of my Christmas day. I decided to go into the office. At least there I could lose myself in work, focus on something productive instead of dwelling on the pain. The office building was empty as expected. The silence was actually comforting as I settled at my desk and immersed myself in the engine design project. Hours passed. I made adjustments, ran simulations, documented my findings. The familiar routine of problem-solving gave me something to focus on besides my family situation. Around 4 p.m., my phone started ringing. First, my father, then my mother, then Melissa, one after another, with barely a pause. I silenced the phone, not ready to hear whatever excuses they might offer. Text messages began flooding in, too. From my father, Stuart, please call me. We need to talk. From my mother, Stuart, Wayne Palmer. You answer your phone right now. This is completely uncalled for. From Melissa, Stu, come on, pick up. Dad is really upset. I ignored them all and continued working. Whatever crisis my video had caused, it was no longer my problem. They had made their choice when they excluded me, and now they would have to live with the consequences. More calls came in over the hour, more texts. I turned my phone off entirely and kept working, losing myself in the complex equations and design challenges that had always given me a sense of purpose and control. At exactly 5:17 p.m., 73 minutes after I had sent the video, there was a knock at the office door. Confused, I walked through the empty workspace to see who it could be. The building required a key card for entry, so it had to be another employee. I opened the door and froze. Standing there, looking exhausted and disheveled, was my father. For a moment, we just stared at each other, neither of us speaking. My father looked older than I remembered, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. He was still wearing the same sweater from the Christmas Eve photos, now rumpled from what must have been a long drive. How did you find me? I finally asked, my voice coming out harder than I intended. Your building security called up. I told them I was your father. He paused, shifting uncomfortably. Can I come in? I stepped aside, allowing him into the office. I led him through the workspace to my desk, clearing a chair for him. He lowered himself into it with a sigh that spoke of both physical and emotional exhaustion. You drove all the way from Boston? I asked, calculating the distance. That's 5 hours, at least. 5 hours and 17 minutes, with one stop for gas, he confirmed. Left as soon as I saw your video. I sat down across from him, arms crossed defensively. Where does Mom think you are? She knows where I am. He met my eyes directly. Stuart, I'm so sorry. The simple apology caught me off guard. I had expected excuses, justifications, perhaps even anger. Not this straightforward acknowledgement. Sorry for what, exactly? For excluding me from Christmas? For lying to me? Or just for getting caught? My father winced at the harshness in my tone. For all of it. For letting your mother convince me it was better not to upset the extended family by having you there. For not standing up for you. For being a coward. His honesty was disarming. I had never heard my father speak so openly about his failings before. What do you mean, upset the extended family by having me there? What did I ever do to them? He sighed deeply, rubbing his hand across his face. It's not what you did, it's what they think you might do. Your mother told everyone you had criticized Derek, that you were trying to cause problems between him and Melissa. She said having you at Christmas would just create tension and drama. I felt my anger rising again. So, I was excluded because I had concerns about a man who was clearly lying about having children? Children who apparently don't even exist? My father's eyes widened slightly. What do you mean, don't exist? Those girls Derek claims are his daughters? I did some digging last night. The woman he identifies as their mother shows no evidence of having children. There are no records of him having children either. He's making it all up, Dad. And somehow I'm the bad guy for questioning it. My father looked genuinely shocked. Are you sure about this? Pretty sure. But even if I'm wrong, that doesn't justify excluding me from a family Christmas based on lies. Mom told me you guys wanted a break from the stress, that you were having a quiet, low-key holiday. Instead, you hosted the entire extended family and neighborhood. He had the decency to look ashamed. Your mother organized it all. When I objected to not including you, she said you were too busy with work anyway, that you probably wouldn't want to come. And you believed that? Or did you just find it easier to go along with her, like always? The words were harsh, but I couldn't hold back anymore. Years of frustration and hurt were spilling out. My father flinched, but didn't deny it. I've spent my whole life trying to keep the peace, Stuart. It was wrong. I see that now. Seeing that truck you bought for me, his voice cracked with emotion. No one has ever done anything like that for me. And all I could think was how badly I had failed you as a father. The raw pain in his voice cut through some of my anger. This was the most vulnerable I had ever seen my father. I've wanted that truck for 20 years, he continued quietly. Talked about it so many times that your mother got sick of hearing about it. But I never thought I'd actually own one. I certainly never expected my son to make that dream come true, especially after how we've treated you. I wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but I could feel my resolve weakening. So, what now, Dad? You drove 5 hours to say sorry. And then what? You go back home to Mom and everything continues as before? He shook his head firmly. No. Nothing continues as before. I left your mother at the house with all the relatives still there. Walked out in the middle of Christmas breakfast when I saw your video. I told her I was coming to find you and that things would be different from now on. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. Different how? I'm done letting her dictate everything. Done letting her push you away because you don't fit into her perfect family image. Done watching her manipulate Melissa and everyone else around her. There was a new steadiness in his voice I had never heard before. I should have stood up to her years ago. Stuart, for you, for Melissa, for myself. But I am standing up now. I wanted to believe him, but years of watching him defer to my mother made it difficult. What about Melissa and Derek? Melissa was upset when I left. She doesn't understand why you're making such a big deal about not being invited to Christmas. Your mother has convinced her that you're just being dramatic for attention. He hesitated. As for Derek, I don't know what to think now. If what you're saying about those girls is true, it is, I insisted. Why would someone lie about having children? What does he gain from that? My father considered this. Your mother adores those girls. She's always buying them gifts, offering to watch them when Derek and Melissa have plans. She's even talked about setting up college funds for them. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. He's scamming her, Dad. Scamming all of you. Getting financial benefits by pretending to be a single dad with 2 cute kids. My father looked troubled by this possibility. We need to look into this more before making accusations, but you might be right. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing everything. So, what happens now? I finally asked. Now, my father said, standing up, we drive back to Boston together. In that truck you bought me. And we confront your mother and the rest of the family, together. The determination in his voice was something new, something I had always wished to hear from him. But I was still hesitant. Dad, I haven't called them back for a reason. I'm not sure I'm ready to face everyone. To hear whatever excuses they've prepared. I understand that. But Stuart, running my own repair shop has been my dream for decades, just like that truck. And I never pursued it because I was afraid of rocking the boat. Don't make my mistakes. Don't let fear of confrontation keep you from standing up for yourself. His words resonated with me. All these years, I had thought my father was weak for not standing up to my mother. But perhaps he had just been trapped in a pattern he couldn't see a way out of. The truck is yours, I said. Finally. I bought it for you. But yes, we can drive it to Boston together. For the first time since he arrived, my father smiled. A genuine smile that reached his eyes. Thank you, son. Not just for the truck, but for giving me the push I needed to finally do what's right. As we left the office and headed to my apartment building's garage, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Anger and hurt were still prominent. But now there was also a cautious hope. Not necessarily for reconciliation with my mother or sister, but for a new, more honest relationship with my father. The confrontation waiting for us in Boston would not be easy. But for once, I wouldn't be facing it alone. The drive from Detroit to Boston in the new truck was surprisingly comfortable. Despite the emotional weight of our impending confrontation, my father took the wheel, insisting he wanted to experience his new vehicle properly. As he drove, his hands caressed the leather steering wheel with a reverence that confirmed I had made the right choice, regardless of how things played out with the rest of the family. The 5-hour journey gave us time to talk, really talk, in a way we never had before. Without my mother's presence to monitor and direct our conversations, my father opened up about his life, his regrets, and the gradual erosion of his autonomy in his marriage. Your mother wasn't always like this, he said as we crossed into New York State. When we first met, she was ambitious, driven, but also kind. She had dreams of running her own business, being independent. What changed? I asked. He sighed deeply. Life, I suppose. Her father's business failed when we were newlyweds. It devastated him and by extension her. After that, she became obsessed with stability, with appearances. When you were born, it intensified. Everything had to be perfect. Controlled. And Melissa became the perfect, controllable child, I added. He nodded sadly. You were always independent, even as a little boy. You questioned things, had your own ideas. Linda saw that as a threat to the perfect family image she was cultivating. We drove in silence for a while, the highway stretching endlessly before us. My father finally spoke again near the Pennsylvania border. I love your mother, Stuart, despite everything. But I don't like what she has become, or what I allowed myself to become by enabling her. His honesty was refreshing, and painful, all at once. As we approached Boston, the tension in the truck became palpable. It was early evening on December 26th, and according to a text my father had received, many of the extended family members were still at the house, extending the Christmas celebration into a second day. Are you ready for this? My father asked as we turned onto the familiar street of my childhood. No, I admitted. But I don't think I ever will be. So, let's just get it over with. The house was lit up with Christmas lights, every window glowing warmly against the winter darkness. Several cars were still parked in the driveway and along the street. The scene looked like a perfect holiday greeting card, which made the knowledge of my deliberate exclusion all the more painful. My father parked the truck directly in front of the house, not bothering to hide its presence. As we walked up the driveway, I could hear laughter and music coming from inside. The normalcy of it, the continuation of celebrations as if nothing was wrong, made my stomach churn. My father didn't bother with his key. He rang the doorbell, standing tall beside me in a show of solidarity that meant more than he could know. My mother opened the door, her festive smile freezing when she saw me standing there. She was still wearing a Christmas sweater, this one green with silver snowflakes. Robert, she said, ignoring me completely. You're back. We were starting to worry. We need to talk, Linda, my father said firmly. All of us. Without waiting for a response, he stepped past her into the house, gesturing for me to follow. I did, noting how my mother's body stiffened as I passed her. The living room fell silent as we entered. My aunts and uncles, cousins, and several family friends all stared at me, expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort. Melissa was seated on the couch next to Derek, the two girls who were supposedly his daughters playing with new toys on the floor in front of them. Stuart! Aunt Martha finally said, breaking the awkward silence. We didn't know you were coming. Your mother said you couldn't make it because of work. That's what I was told, too, I replied evenly. Except in my case, I was told there was no Christmas celebration happening at all. Confused murmurs spread through the room. My mother had followed us in and was now standing with her arms crossed defensively. Stuart is being dramatic, she said dismissively. We simply wanted a quiet Christmas this year, and he took it personally. My father shook his head. No, Linda. You deliberately excluded our son from the family Christmas and lied to him about it. And I went along with it, which makes me just as guilty. But no more. The directness of his challenge to my mother shocked everyone. In all my life, I had never heard him contradict her so publicly. This is hardly the time or place for this discussion, my mother hissed, glancing nervously at our relatives. Actually, it is exactly the right time and place, I countered. Since apparently everyone here was told I chose not to come rather than the truth, which is that I was told there was no celebration to attend. Melissa stood up, her face flushed with either anger or embarrassment. Why are you doing this, Stuart? Why can't you just let us have a nice family Christmas without making it all about you? All about me? I repeated incredulously. I was excluded, Melissa. Deliberately cut out of family photos and celebrations based on lies. How is my reaction to that making it all about me? You've always been jealous of me, she shot back. Always resented that Mom and Dad love me. And now you're trying to ruin my first Christmas with Derek and the girls because you can't stand to see me happy. Derek had risen to stand beside her, his arm protectively around her shoulders. The performance might have been convincing if I hadn't been sure he was hiding something. Speaking of the girls, I said, turning my attention to him. Emma and Lily, right? Funny, I couldn't find any record of them actually being your daughters, Derek. No birth certificates, no school records, not even any photos of them with you before you started dating my sister. Derek's face paled slightly, but he maintained his composure. I don't have to prove anything to you. You've never liked me, and now you're making up lies to try to turn Melissa against me. My cousin Brian was looking back and forth between us, confusion evident on his face. Wait, those aren't your daughters? Who are they then? Derek glared at Brian. Of course, they're my daughters. Stuart is just trying to cause trouble. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Other relatives were now looking at the girls more carefully, whispering. My mother stepped forward, clearly trying to regain control. That is enough, Stuart. You have disrupted our holiday enough. I think you should leave. Not until we get some answers. My father interjected, his voice steady. Linda, why did you lie to our son about Christmas? And why have you been telling everyone he chose not to come when you know that's not true? Put on the spot, my mother's composure faltered. I was trying to protect this family. Stuart has been increasingly distant, critical of our choices, judgmental of Melissa's relationship. I didn't want his negativity to ruin Christmas for everyone else. So, you decided excluding your own son was the solution? My father pressed. Rather than talking to him, understanding his concerns, you just cut him out completely. His concerns are unfounded, she insisted. He's been making wild accusations about Derek, trying to come between him and Melissa because he can't stand to see her happy. I noticed Derek shifting uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the door as if considering an exit. If my concerns are so unfounded, Derek, I said directly to him, then you won't mind explaining why Jennifer in Chicago, who you claim is the mother of your daughters, shows no evidence of having children at all. Or why these girls seem to have appeared out of nowhere exactly when you started getting serious with my sister. The room had gone completely silent. All eyes were on Derek now. Melissa looked up at him, uncertainty crossing her face for the first time. Derek, what is he talking about? Derek's confident facade was cracking. He's just trying to. 'Cause problems, babe. You know that. One of the little girls, Emma, I presumed, looked up from her toys. Uncle Derek, can we have more hot chocolate? Uncle Derek. Not Dad. The slip was small, but significant. A collective gasp went through the room. Uncle? Melissa repeated, stepping away from Derek. Why did she call you uncle? Derek was floundering now. She gets confused sometimes. Kids say the darndest things, right? The other girl, Lily, looked equally confused. But you told us to call you Daddy when we're here, and Uncle Derek when we're at home with Mommy. The room erupted in shock and confusion. My mother's face had gone white, and Melissa looked like she might be sick. Who are these children, Derek? My father demanded. Cornered, Derek finally broke. They're my nieces, okay? My sister's kids. I borrowed them to make a good impression. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Melissa's voice was barely above a whisper. You lied about having children? You made me think I was building a relationship with your daughters? How is that not a big deal? My mother had sunk into a chair. Her perfect family Christmas crumbling around her. I bought them presents, she said faintly. I was setting up college funds. That was the idea, wasn't it, Derek? I said, the pieces fully coming together now. Get my mother emotionally invested in your fake daughters so she would financially invest in them, too. And by extension, in you. Derek's face hardened. You don't know anything. I know you're a fraud, I replied evenly. And I think everyone else here knows it now, too. Melissa had backed away from him completely, tears streaming down her face. Get out, she whispered. Get out and take your nieces with you. I never want to see you again. The next half hour was chaos as Derek gathered the girls and their things, making a hasty exit amid the shocked stares of our relatives. Several people approached me to apologize for believing I had simply chosen not to attend Christmas. Aunt Martha hugged me tightly, whispering how much she had missed me and how wrong it all was. Through it all, my mother remained seated, silent and pale, watching as her carefully constructed, perfect family image disintegrated. When most of the relatives had left, promising to call the next day, she finally spoke. I was trying to protect this family, she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. No, Mom, I replied, tired, but relieved that the truth was finally out. You were trying to control this family, and in doing so, you almost destroyed it. My father placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture of support that meant everything in that moment. Things will be different from now on, Linda, he said quietly, but firmly. Stuart is our son, and he will always have a place in this family. If you cannot accept that, then we have bigger problems than a ruined Christmas. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother at a loss for words. The reality of what she had done and what it had cost her seemed to be finally sinking in. Melissa approached me hesitantly, her eyes red from crying. I'm so sorry, Stuart. I had no idea Mom told you there was no Christmas celebration. I just thought you were too busy to come. Like always. The like always stung, but I let it go. There had been enough confrontation for one day. We have a lot to talk about, Melissa, I said gently. But not tonight. Tonight, I think we all need some space to process everything that's happened. She nodded, then gestured toward the front window. Is that Dad's new truck outside? Yes, I said, allowing myself a small smile. My Christmas gift to him. It's beautiful, she admitted. He's going to love it. He already does, I replied, glancing at our father, who for the first time in years looked like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. As I prepared to leave, promising to return the next day for a real conversation, my father walked me to the door. I'm proud of you, Stuart, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just for the truck, though that's the most generous gift I've ever received, but for standing up for yourself, for the truth. It's long overdue, And I'm sorry it took this to make me see that. I hugged him, feeling a connection that had been missing for too long. It's not too late, Dad. For any of us. As I walked back to the truck to retrieve my overnight bag, I glanced back at the house. Through the window, I could see my mother sitting alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of her perfect Christmas that had been built on lies. For the first time, I felt not anger toward her, but a kind of pity. The truth had been painful, but necessary. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward building something real and honest in its place. 3 months have passed since that fateful Christmas confrontation. Spring has come to Boston, bringing with it not just warmer weather and blooming flowers, but a new beginning for my family as well. I'm back in Detroit now, sitting in my apartment as I reflect on everything that has changed. The engine design project my team and I were working on during those difficult holiday days has been completed successfully, earning praise from company executives and potentially leading to a promotion in my near future. But my career achievements, while still important to me, no longer feel like the only measure of my success or worth. The most significant change has been in my relationship with my father. True to his word, Robert Palmer has been standing up for himself and making changes in his life. 2 weeks after Christmas, he surprised everyone by announcing he was leaving his job at the garage to finally pursue his dream of opening his own auto repair shop. He found a small but well-located space for rent on the outskirts of Boston and invested his savings in equipment and supplies. Palmer & Son Auto Repair opened its doors in February. The & Son part was his idea, despite my geographical distance from the business. You inspired me to finally do this, he told me during one of our now regular Sunday phone calls. Your name belongs on the sign, too. He drives the blue Ford F-150 truck to work every day, proudly parking it in front of the shop as an unofficial advertisement. According to him, it has drawn quite a bit of attention and helped bring in customers curious about the new business. He sends me photos of the truck at least once a week, always with a new angle or in a different location, like a proud parent documenting their child's growth. My relationship with my mother has been more complicated. The exposure of her lies and manipulation at Christmas forced her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself and her behavior toward me over the years. Initially, she retreated into a defensive shell, maintaining that she had only been trying to protect the family harmony. But as weeks passed and my father continued to assert his independence, something began to shift. It started with a text message in late January. A simple "I miss you." That must have cost her considerable pride to send. Then came a birthday card in February with a handwritten note acknowledging that she had been unfair to me and asking if we could talk. Our first conversation was awkward and strained, both of us navigating unfamiliar territory. But it was honest in a way our interactions had never been before. She admitted that she had always found my independence threatening, that it reminded her too much of her own abandoned ambitions. I was so afraid of you making the same mistakes my father made, she confessed during our second call. Taking risks and failing. But in trying to protect you from failure, I pushed you away entirely. We are not close yet, and may never have the warm, loving relationship some mothers and sons enjoy. But we are communicating now, with a level of truth that feels like progress. She has even begun seeing a therapist, something the old Linda Palmer would have considered an unacceptable admission of weakness. The most surprising development has been with Melissa. After the humiliation of discovering Derek's deception, she threw herself into her work as an elementary school teacher, avoiding dating or social events. We began texting regularly. First, just brief check-ins, then longer conversations about our childhood and the family dynamics that had driven us apart. Last month, she flew to Detroit for a weekend visit, her first time seeing my life here. I showed her around the city, introduced her to my friends and colleagues, and gave her a tour of the automotive plant where I work. On our last night, over dinner at my favorite local restaurant, she made a confession that caught me completely off guard. I was always jealous of you, Stuart, she said, staring into her glass of wine rather than meeting my eyes. You had the courage to leave, to build your own life away from Mom's control. I resented you for that freedom, even while I envied it. Her honesty opened the door to a deeper conversation about our shared childhood experiences and how differently we had each responded to our mother's controlling nature. For the first time, I felt like I was talking to my sister as an equal adult rather than competitors in our mother's approval game. As for Derek, he disappeared from our lives completely after that Christmas confrontation. According to mutual acquaintances, he left Boston entirely, presumably to find another family to infiltrate with his elaborate lies. The nieces, who had played the role of his daughters, were returned to their mother, Derek's sister, who apparently had been struggling financially and had agreed to the charade in exchange for monetary support. The track that sparked this whole chain of events has become a symbol of the changing relationship between my father and me. When I visit Boston now, which I've done twice since Christmas, we spend hours working on small customizations and improvements to the vehicle. It has become our shared project, a tangible representation of the bond we are rebuilding. During my last visit, as we were installing a new sound system in the truck, my father turned to me with an uncharacteristic vulnerability in his eyes. "I wasted so many years being passive, Stuart. Watching life happen instead of making it happen." He tightened a bolt with perhaps more force than necessary. "I don't want you to make that same mistake. Promise me you will always stand up for yourself, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." I promised him I would, and it's a commitment I intend to keep. This experience has taught me several profound lessons that I carry with me daily now. First, that honesty, however painful initially, is always preferable to comforting lies. The temporary peace maintained by my mother's deceptions ultimately caused far more damage than the truth would have. Second, that it is never too late to change destructive patterns. My father, at 62 years old, finally found the courage to pursue his dream and stand up for himself and his son. My mother, at 59, is beginning to examine her controlling behavior and its roots in her own fears and insecurities. Even Melissa, at 27, is reassessing her role in our family dynamics and making choices based on her own desires rather than our mother's expectations. And finally, I've learned that genuine love requires both truth and boundaries. By allowing my family to continue their unhealthy behaviors unchallenged, I was not doing any of us a favor. Standing firm and demanding honesty and respect was not an act of hostility, but rather an act of true love, offering them the opportunity to grow and change. As we approach the spring holidays, there has already been talk of new traditions. My father suggested a 4th of July gathering at the shop with a barbecue and fireworks. My mother, surprisingly, has proposed that next Christmas be held at my place in Detroit, a neutral territory where we might begin fresh without the ghosts of past holidays haunting us. I don't know what the future holds for my family. Healing is a slow, nonlinear process with setbacks and complications along the way. But for the first time in many years, I feel hopeful that we are moving in the right direction, towards something authentic and meaningful. The $26,700 truck turned out to be more than just a generous gift. It became the catalyst for truth, change, and ultimately, healing. Sometimes the most valuable gifts are not the ones we plan, but the ones that emerge unexpectedly from our darkest moments. So, I have to ask you, what boundaries have you needed to set with family that you've been avoiding? Have you ever had to confront difficult truths to save relationships that truly matter to you? Tell me your stories. Share your experiences in the comments below, I'd love to hear them. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, but necessary for authentic relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most beautiful beginnings.